February 4th, 2026. 1:25 in the afternoon. Broad daylight on one of Chicago's busiest streets. A young mother sits in a car with her baby in the back seat. Within seconds, her life will be over. More than 50 bullets will tear through that vehicle while her infant daughter watches. And the question that haunts everyone who hears this story is simple. Why? Before we dive into what happened to Gabryel Ayers, do me a favor. If you're interested in true crime cases that need answers, hit that like button, subscribe to Crime Files, and click that bell icon so you never miss when we cover cases that demand justice. Now let's talk about Gabby. 26 years old. A hairstylist trying to make her way in Chicago. She wasn't famous. She wasn't wealthy. She was just a regular person living her life, doing hair, taking care of her baby girl. The people who knew her called her Gabby, and by all accounts, she was focused on building something for herself and her daughter. That little girl was less than a year old, still in diapers, still learning the world. And on that Wednesday afternoon, that baby was properly strapped into her car seat in the back of a white Chevrolet sedan. Probably played with a toy, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Gabby was in the front seat. Next to her was 27-year-old Devin Draper. They were parked on South May Street in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood, right on the 7900 block. Now, if you don't know Chicago, let me paint you a picture. This isn't some isolated area. This is literally steps away from St. Sabina Church. There's a food pantry right there. Leo High School is nearby. People are everywhere at 1:30 in the afternoon. Kids getting out of school. People going about their day. This is the kind of street where you'd expect to be safe in broad daylight. But safety is an illusion, isn't it? Because while Gabby and Devin sat in that car, while their baby girl sat in the back with her lollipop, 3 figures were approaching. 3 people wearing masks. And they weren't coming to talk. Tim Allison was inside the St. Sabina Social Service Center that day. He's the executive director, and he was in a meeting when he heard what he thought was a truck stopping outside. You know that sound, right? That mechanical noise. But this sound didn't stop. It kept going. It kept echoing. And that's when Tim realized what he was actually hearing. Gunshots. Not 1 or 2. Not a quick burst. This was sustained fire. This was an execution. Tim did what any rational person would do. He told everyone to get down. He ran to close the metal blinds. He was trying to protect the people inside his building while outside, on that busy street. In the middle of the day, 3 masked gunmen were unloading their weapons into a car with a baby inside. Let's talk about what actually happened in those moments, because the details matter here. The surveillance footage tells a story that's hard to believe even when you see it. 3 people, all masked, run up to that white Chevrolet. They don't hesitate. They don't shout warnings. They just start shooting. At least 24 shots in the first wave. Can you imagine that? 24 bullets flying into a vehicle in the middle of the afternoon while people are nearby going about their lives. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. After that first barrage, after pumping 24 rounds into car, these 3 shooters run back to their getaway vehicle. It's a red Alfa Romeo. Distinctive, flashy, not exactly the kind of car you'd expect criminals to use when they're trying to blend in. And you think that's it, right? They got away. But no, the driver of that red Alfa Romeo does something that shows you just how calculated this attack was. He pulls that car right up next to Gabby's vehicle, right alongside it, so the shooters can fire even more rounds into the car. We're not talking about a crime of passion here. We're not talking about someone who lost their temper. This was methodical. This was planned. This was 3 people who wanted Gabby dead and didn't care who else got hurt in the process. The impact of all those bullets caused Gabby's car to crash into a nearby GMC van. More than 50 shell casings were later found at the scene. 50. That's not a shooting. That's a war zone. And when Tim Allison and his staff finally came outside after hearing the getaway car speed off, the scene was something nobody should have to witness. Devin Draper was wounded. He'd been shot in the arm and the buttocks. He was trying to move, try to do something, but he was hurt. Gabby was in critical condition, multiple gunshot wounds to her body. She was rushed to Little Company of Mary Hospital, which some people call Loyola University Medical Center. The doctors tried. They really did. But there was too much damage. Gabby died from her injuries. And that baby, that 1-year-old little girl in the back seat, she was crying, still strapped in her car seat, still holding her lollipop. A witness later said that image will never leave their mind. Seeing that child crying, surrounded by shattered glass and blood, not understanding that her mother was dying in the front seat. Shell casings were found inside the baby's car seat. Inside it, inches from that child's body. But somehow, miraculously, she wasn't hit. Not a single bullet touched her. How does that happen? How do 50-plus bullets get fired into a car and the baby survives without a scratch? Some people call it a miracle. Some people call it luck. But here's what it really is. It's a reminder of how close we came to this being even worse than it already was. The Red Alfa Romeo was later found abandoned and torched. Because of course it was. These weren't amateurs. They knew what they were doing. Burn the evidence. Destroy any DNA. Make it harder for the police to trace anything back. So now we have a dead young mother, a wounded man, a traumatized baby, and 3 mass killers in the wind. And the question everyone in Auburn Gresham wanted answered was simple. Why? What could Gabby have possibly done to deserve this? What threat did a hairstylist with a baby pose to anyone? The police aren't talking. Area 2 detectives caught the case, and as of right now, as I'm recording this, they've been tight-lipped about what they know. They're reviewing surveillance footage from nearby buildings. They're interviewing witnesses. They're doing their jobs. But they haven't told the public what the motive might be. They haven't said whether Gabby was a target or if maybe Devin Draper was the intended victim. And Gabby was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. They haven't confirmed if this was gang-related, if it was personal, if it was mistaken identity. Nothing. And that silence? That's what makes cases like this so frustrating for families and communities. Because when you don't have answers, you fill in the blanks yourself. You start wondering. You start assuming. And sometimes those assumptions are wrong, and they hurt people who are already grieving. What we do know is this. The attack was targeted. You don't get 3 mass shooters with automatic weapons showing up in broad daylight unless someone planned this. You don't fire 50-plus rounds into a specific vehicle unless you want someone in that car dead. This wasn't random. This wasn't a drive-by where shots get sprayed, and whoever gets hit gets hit. This was an execution attempt. The community's response tells you everything you need to know about how this hit people. 2 days after Gabby's murder, on February 7th, hundreds of people showed up for a prayer vigil at the exact spot where she died. 79th and May. Father Michael Flegger from St. Sabina Church led the vigil, and he didn't mince words. He looked into the cameras and said, "Think of her. Think of that baby's face. Think of that mother laying in that car dead. And I pray you don't sleep until you talk and tell what you know." Mayor Brandon Johnson was there. Illinois State Senator Willie Preston was there. The alderman was there. Police commanders were there. Community activists, violence interrupters, faith leaders. All standing on that street corner demanding answers. Senator Preston called the shooters monsters. And honestly, what else do you call someone who runs up on a car in broad daylight and opens fire with a baby in the backseat? Jamal Green, a Chicago community activist, stepped up and committed to paying for Gabby's entire funeral. Just took that burden off the family because he knew they were already dealing with enough. St. Sabina Parish put up $10,000 as a reward for information. Cook County Crime Stoppers added another $10,000. $20,000 total for anyone who could help solve this case. $20,000 is sitting there waiting for someone to do the right thing. And yet, as of now, nobody's been arrested. Nobody's come forward with information that led to charges. Which means 3 people who murdered a young mother in front of her baby are still out there, walking around, breathing, living their lives while Gabby's in the ground, and her daughter's growing up without a mother. Let me tell you something that makes this even heavier. Mayor Brandon Johnson mentioned during that vigil that Chicago had just recorded the fewest murders in 60 years during 2025. 60 years. The city was trending in the right direction. People were starting to feel hopeful, that maybe things were changing. And then this happens. Broad daylight, busy street, a young mother gunned down with her baby watching. It's like all that progress, all that hope just gets ripped away in 90 seconds of gunfire. Now let's talk about Gabby herself for a minute, because she deserves more than just being remembered as a victim. She was a hairstylist. That means she was someone who made people feel good about themselves. You know how personal that relationship is, right? When you find a hairstylist you trust, they become part of your life. You tell them things. They know your struggles. They celebrate your wins with you. Gabby was building that for herself. She was creating a career, a client base, a future. She had a baby girl to raise. She had dreams like anyone else. Her family and friends called her Gabby, not Gabryel. Gabby, that tells you she was approachable. She was real. She wasn't putting on airs or trying to be something she wasn't. And now her daughter is being raised by Gabby's mother. That little girl is going to grow up knowing her mom only through photos and stories. She'll never actually remember her. She was too young. And that's its own kind of tragedy, isn't it? To have your mother taken from you before you're old enough to even form memories of her. Devin Draper survived his injuries. He was treated at Christ Medical Center in Oak Lawn and released in good condition. But surviving physically and surviving mentally are two different things. How do you process being in a car when someone you care about gets murdered right next to you? How do you explain to a 1-year-old why mommy isn't coming home? What do you tell her when she's old enough to ask questions? The getaway car being torched tells us these shooters knew what they were doing. They understood forensics. They knew that burning the vehicle would destroy fingerprints, DNA, anything that could tie them to the scene. That level of planning suggests this wasn't their first time. You don't just know to do that unless you've been around this kind of violence before, or you've thought through how to get away with murder. And here's something that keeps nagging at me. 3 shooters. Not 1, not 2, 3. That means 3 different people woke up on February 4th, got ready, met up with each other, grabbed their guns, put on masks, drove Auburn, Gresham, and made a collective decision to murder someone in front of her child. 3 separate human beings all agreed this was okay. All decided that whatever Gabby or Devin allegedly did was worth taking a life over, worth traumatizing a baby over, worth destroying a family over. What kind of mindset do you have to be in to do something like that? What has to happen to you in your life where you're comfortable being one of 3 people who runs up on a car and empties a clip into it while a baby screams in the backseat? Because I'm trying to understand it, and I can't. I genuinely cannot wrap my mind around that level of callousness. The witnesses who were nearby that day, the people at the food pantry, the staff at St. Sabina, they're going to carry this with them forever. Tim Allison thought he heard a truck. That sound is going to haunt him. Every time he hears something similar, he's going to be right back in that moment, telling people to get down, closing those metal blinds, hearing those shots echo. The Chicago police held a roll call at the scene afterward. That's when officers gathered at the beginning of their shift to get assignments and instructions. They did it right there on 79th of May as a show of solidarity with the Auburn Gresham community. It's a symbolic gesture, and symbols matter. But symbols don't catch killers. Information does. Evidence does. And right now, somebody out there knows something they're not saying. Maybe you were there that day. Maybe you saw that red Alfa Romeo before it got torched. Maybe you heard someone bragging about what they did. Maybe you know who owns a gun that matches the casings found at the scene. Whatever it is, that information could be the difference between justice and these killers walking free. $20,000 is still on the table. Cook County Crime Stoppers, St. Sabina Parish. They're waiting for that call. And here's the thing about Crime Stoppers. Your tip is completely anonymous. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to testify in court. You just have to tell them what you know. One phone call could change everything for Gabby's family. Because let's be real about something. People who are willing to do what was done to Gabby don't just stop. This kind of violence doesn't happen once and then disappear. If they got away with this, if there are no consequences, they'll do it again. Gabby's daughter is growing up without her mother because 3 cowards decided that bullets were the answer to whatever problem they thought they had. That little girl will go to her first day of school without her mom there to take pictures. She'll have her first heartbreak without her mom there to comfort her. She'll graduate, maybe get married someday, maybe have kids of her own, and Gabby won't be there for any of it. So here's what I want you to think about. What makes someone capable of this? What happens in a person's life that removes empathy to the point where they can look at a car with a baby inside and still pull the trigger? Is it desperation? Is it rage? Is it some twisted sense of respect or reputation? And here's the other question. If you knew who did this, would you speak up? If it was your brother, your cousin, your friend, would you turn them in? Because that's the real test. When doing the right thing costs you something personal, Gabby deserved better. Her daughter deserves better. And the only way any of that happens is if people stop protecting murderers. If this case got to you, if you want to see justice for Gabby and her daughter, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Files. Hit that like button. Share this video. Keep this story alive until someone comes forward with answers. And if you know something, anything at all, call Cook County Crime Stoppers at 1-800-535-STOP. That's 1-800-535-7867. You can also submit tips online at tip.com. We'll keep following this case. We'll keep demanding answers. And we won't let Gabby's name be forgotten.